So why are we on the stage? Obviously, probably nobody knew about me probably 3 years ago because I'm relatively new to this world. So I say outrageous stuff and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but it seems to strike a chord, which is good. As far as awards winning, and we'll go on to the creative competition as well for Ocean Outdoor. But little known fact, I have actually won a BAFTA before, so it's quite nice to finally be on stage because the BBC actually went up on stage and picked mine up for me, and it was for Noddy, by the way, so I'd love it to have been Star Wars or something like that, but it was actually Noddy, let's get ready for school, CD-ROM. There you go. I didn't win one for Teletubbies that year either, so I was a bit disappointed. However, I've been on quite a few judging panels, and I tend to go through the midnight burn on the Sunday when you're due to deliver on the Monday. So I know what it's like to be a judge, and I've seen plenty and plenty of award entries. And we've also, as I say, we've won awards as well. So we always have that nervous stomach about when you go to the awards do, have you won or not, or did you get the email, etc. So we've got a little bit of history there. And obviously, Kat, I don't know when you explain about the creative awards that you run, just your part in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll come on to it in a little bit more detail later, but absolutely. So we run the creative digital competition, and kind of I look at helping creative agencies and media agencies and specialists to actually enter, and then also help them actually activate those ideas as well. So help with the judging panel and the activation on that, absolutely.
So let's cut to the chase. I'm going to just take you through the top 10 reasons, and then pretty much you can leave after that, because that's all you need to know. Of course, there aren't a guide to the top 10 reasons because you can just follow these and you win every award. So before you start tweeting these as I read them, these are tongue-in-cheek and they're meant to be a point which will draw you back to later. But here are the top 10 tips that if you ask most people in the creative industries, this is how you win an award. So you definitely need big clients. And clearly you need big brands and interesting briefs. So if you don't have those, you're not even going to be in the ballpark to win an award for any of them. So, you know, the analogy is you need all the fast cars in your garage and you'd be able to pick the key. When you're even recruiting, you need to, your new business people need to go out and find big clients. That's clearly what you need to do. By the way, don't tweet any of this because these are the fibs. So I don't want to be associated to any of these facts. But that's genuinely what a lot of people think. They think, oh, we've got a really good big client, we can win a load of awards. And what you tend to find is actually that the bigger clients are more risk averse because they've got nothing to prove. They just want to get their name out there. So definitely not a thing.
So yeah, so this is all about basically picking one or two favourite clients, identifying them early, right at the beginning of the year, and throwing all of your best resources at them. They're going to be your cash cow.
And that's Violet Beauregard, by the way. Yeah. Anybody hasn't spotted that, the sort of slightly bratty one out of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And obviously, we've mentioned this before, it was sort of the creative agencies get a little bit of a bad rap in this world, I suspect. And this is what we think the creative agencies do most of the time. So, and it's not a million miles away. So you definitely need to give creative teams some space. If you don't come up with the idea initially, then that's actually where the big grind comes in. So a lot of our awards that we've always won, they've taken a long time to get to the point. They've taken a lot of presentations. And really, if you don't give them the time just to go away to the pub, think about it, even think of hiring a team specifically for your awards. Just let them at it, give them all your best accounts, and that's how the best awards happen. By the way, that's not actually a thing either, so please don't quote me on that.
And then when you're actually at the beginning of the ideas generation process, make sure from the outset you're visualising the awards entry video. Don't worry about the details, they can be skimmed over for now, you can come back to those later. And obviously it goes without saying, you have to have a world's first in there. The more obscure, the better.
You can even practice the voiceover for that before you actually get there. So if it doesn't start in a world's first, then don't even bother submitting it. Choose a good cause. So if your client has a pet project that, you know, maybe it's about saving hedgehogs or air quality or something like that, not necessarily a charity, but, you know, just a good cause. Something ideally that will cast a little bit of a tear. So especially if you put the, you know, the soundtrack's very important to your awards video as well. So you do something, you want something that's just got just a little bit downbeat, and then it comes up at the end. So you need that. So achieving KPIs for good causes are far less difficult to get wrong. So, for instance, if you've got to save 200 hedgehogs, nobody knows how many there are anyway. So you can just put that in there. It's fine.
And I can't stress this one enough, it's all about the louder your voice, the better. So if you've got your campaign, make sure you get all of your team to share it on their social channels. And don't forget to ask your family and friends as well. Maybe even consider putting some social media budget behind it. And even better, if it's actually an award that people can actually vote for, make sure you corral the whole company to vote for it. The bigger your company, the better your chances.
Yeah, and we're good at this as well. So the Engine Group is a worldwide group, and WCRS is part of the Engine Group. So we've got 1,000 people just up the road that we can get on any vote. So we have a whole email system dedicated to getting votes. So I don't think we've ever lost a Davy Award vote at this point, because we all just get on it on a Friday and vote. And then obviously I've mentioned this before, but the results are relative. It's a very important thing. So if you only had 2 people looking at your campaign before this, and all of a sudden you've got 4, then that's a 200% increase. And that's a star in the top corner of your awards video, or at least in your awards entry. So don't be untruthful. Obviously you need to search about for them. So you might even search in a different place. So for an out of home, fine, that's only in certain places, but maybe just put the video of your out of home on the internet, and then all of a sudden you've got Google Analytics that can show that people from 200 countries around the world, I think there are only 198 of them or something, but you can show that they all looked at it. And it's probably just the Google bot in each country just checking your website stats are still working. But it's still a stat, so nobody's going to check it. Nobody ever does.
And then if the budgets are actually tight for your actual campaign, make sure you hold something back for the awards entry video. This is your one big a chance to make a big impression to the judges and to wow them and show them that you mean business. So there's no better way to do this than with a celebrity voiceover artist. This will really help to add the halo effect to your campaign and help distract from the details of the actual activation.
So budget, we just mentioned that. So the general equation is deduct can, and then whatever you've got left, just rinse it as many campaigns as you possibly can. So just put some numbers to this. You should be looking at probably £2,000 just for your award entries. Cans about £500, £600 if you get it in early. Of course, you won't do that. You'll wait till the last minute and try to knee-jerk into the awards. So it rises to about £700. And whatever you've got left, it's quantity, not quality. So nobody really goes up to your awards cabinet that closely and looks at them. And they really don't mind whether it's some sort of a fleeting, over in Wales, they're giving away awards for grocery, local grocers or something in Cardiff. Nobody really looks. And by the way, you can buy the plaques on eBay as well. So you can get anything rebadged with any year that you want. So it's all about quantity over quality.
So this one's all about playing hard to get. So if you haven't had a phone call from the organisers checking you're coming, don't even bother putting on your best dress or best suit. And if Aidan and Russ, when you arrive there, have seated you at the back of the award ceremony, let's face it, you might as well go straight to the bar.
There's also an interesting tip here that I found out one year, that sometimes the awards organisers, they sometimes release the awards details on the web, but they don't actually publish it yet. So it's always worth looking at the URL, and if it says finalists 2016, it's just worth changing that to 17, just see if they put the page up there, but they've just not actually published it.
Top tip, top tip.
Did actually happen once.
Well, obviously, that was all very tongue-in-cheek, as we've kind of just said, and most of it was completely untrue, at least most of it anyway. But moving on. So
let's get into the truth part of this. So the rest of this is actually, you can tweet any of this at this point, so I won't look bad at neither of us will. So why do we actually want to win? There are 2 parts to this. There's agency and then there's industry. And I'm classing myself from outside of the out-of-home industry at this point, because it's a very specific difference. So this is what people think agencies do it for. It's all posturing, it's all flexing muscles, it's looking over and, quite frankly, looking down everybody else's shorts, trying to see who's got what. And this is further from the truth. I can't think of any point ever in an agency where we've had a table about other agencies and how much they've won and what they've won. Sure, we go to an award and we might or might not win, and we get a little bit annoyed when we don't, maybe. Or we'll clap politely, and actually because it was a good winner. But what we're really not doing is we're not interested in how we pitch ourselves against other agencies, and certainly not numbers. It's not a numbers game, is what we're after. This is actually what we're after. We're after lists. As boring as it might sound, we want to appear in a list somewhere. Now that list might be in an article in a newspaper, and it might be in a Google search. But any client trying to find you, to try and find out whether they should be working with you, is going to find a list at some point. So this is, I think, last year's or the year before. So, we want to be here so that when somebody types in best agencies in London, then we're in that list. Most awarded agencies in London, most awarded projects at Cannes, whatever it is. So we need to appear in that list. So clients are really important, but then you've got companies like the AAR, who are the matchmakers, the intermediaries between big companies and agencies. A big company needs a website, they don't know who to go to, the AAR puts them in touch. The AAR are constantly scanning for who's on top of their game right now and who's on the recession as well. So lists, as boring as they are, this goes without saying, you need to retain your clients. Your clients are everything to you or to me. So if it wasn't for them giving us work, we wouldn't be able to win awards with the work anyway. So we want to show them that, thank you very much, we've done the best we can, and the caliber of work we're giving you is top caliber, it can win awards. And likewise, all of your clients have gone back to their little departments and they've said, we won an award for the thing that we did. Everybody has a line manager somewhere that has some sort of KPI that says, we want to win some awards, we want to get noticed, we want to be better than last year. And if it just catches them completely off guard and they win an award, that's the best thing usually ever. They will stay with you for next year, and you want to then say, you were the right place, don't go anywhere next year, please. And on that same tact, we've also got awarding staff. So they need to know constantly they're in the right place. Their career depends on knowing that they're in the right vehicle going forwards. So, this, I think it's just down the road actually. This is a sort of at the end of the year, just saying thank you to everybody. But actually it's those little wins. I don't really want to go up and get any more awards on stage. These people will go up instead. It's all about the feeling that they get to. And if you've got some people sat out in, I don't know, Basingstoke at a little agency thinking, I'm wasting my life, I really want to be somewhere where people are winning awards, it's all their mates that are posting award-winning, champagne, all that sort of stuff on Facebook that is doing the job for you. So that's what, as an agency, those three things it's all about.
And I guess from a media owner's point of view, I'd say I could echo that some of those points actually really apply to us as well. But from a wider industry perspective, it is so much bigger than that. So I know I'm probably a bit biased, but I genuinely think we work in one of the most exciting and fastest growing, or at least potentially fastest growing industries and mediums out there. We've all invested in our infrastructure and technology. So I think we really do owe it to ourselves to ensure we're out there reaching out to the creative community to ensure that our platforms are used to their full potential and that investment's realised. Going on the dog theme, Justin's theme set from earlier in the day, we can do this by rewarding the behaviour we want to see more of. So whether that's recognising innovation at scale or campaigns based on effectiveness, but making sure we're not making the mistake of judging them under the same umbrella. And then also those award-winning campaigns can really act as a catalyst to help us punch above our weight in the wider media marketplace. We need to be seen as a medium, as the panel alluded to earlier, that's easy to deal with, that's a really effective medium, that's transparent, that's competitive and relevant. And that will actually help attract interest from other industries and also talent from other industries as well, for instance, data scientists as an example. And this together can help us grow our collective share of the wider media mix.
And I think this also percolates up through the creative agencies as well, that if we know that a standard media buy now has a lot of out-of-home in it, then we'll actually go and find out what we need to do for that. So at the moment, it's relatively invisible. We just do what we call collars and cuffs. It just all looks the same across all the media. So if we don't know the possibilities, then we're not going to rock up with the right work either.
Absolutely. And just before we play this next clip, so this is a really good clip from some other creatives in Cannes from earlier this year, and just shows the appetite amongst the creative community for our medium.
I think the possibilities for digital designers and digital creatives is so exciting at the minute.
Digital out of home is at the start of its journey and we're just about to explode. The technology has gone nano enough to get some really decent stuff in to the spaces that we've got available.
I think it's not enough briefs for it specifically. I think as we would see, like for example, you create a big TV ad that people like squeeze into an online environment. I think we end up doing the same. We do a still poster that we shoot some moving parts where we animate them. I guess that's not the point.
Creatives love problem solving. So, give them an opportunity, tell them that there's a digital component to it and you can do interactive things, you can use Bluetooth, whatever, and then suddenly they start thinking in whole new ways.
Digital out of home and conventional out of home are definitely connected because they're both playing in the public space. But I think to lump them into one bag means, I mean, we see it all the time, it just means that the creativity that's available in digital out of home is not taken advantage of. You know, we all know that technology's there, we all know it's great, we all know we can do great stuff with it, so why isn't that great stuff being done?
So what actually really wins awards, and how do you actually really create award-winning content?
You notice we've put stars in front of all the O's, just in case, being a bit sensitive there.
So it starts with an opportunity. You have to have an opportunity and a platform in the first place that actually courts creativity and allows it to happen. As I've referred to a couple of times already today, our digital creative competition is now in its 8th year and was set up very much with that purpose from the outset. It was set up to better inform both media agencies and creative agencies about what's possible, and then we give them a platform to bring that idea to life. So for any of you who aren't familiar with it, we give them the media prize for free, and then we help them bring those ideas to life and we help them PR that. And that's very much the start of the journey. And we've certainly, I think, seen the awards change and progress, like in terms of entries throughout the years drastically. So, and we're seeing actually entries from all sorts of different areas, even different media owners. So one of our previous winners the year before last was actually Twitter. So, and I think that's really trying to position digital out of home in our portfolio within that wider media mix and showing how different platforms can work together.
I think it's also a slightly bizarre one that it's providing a competition before projects have actually kicked off. So it's a reason to create, whereas a lot of other awards are a reason to award stuff that's already gone out there. So it's a very, very interesting format. New technology. Now, I don't mean this, whether it's an 8mm pixel or a 10mm pixel or whether it's backlit or not. I think this is generally, there is lots of technology out there that we can be bringing to awards. And as a judge, you think, oh, that's quite an interesting use of that. It's fusing it together. So this is a contactless payment. It's got a battery in it. It's Wi-Fi, or it's at least 4G. So you can stick it behind anything. And cancer research used that really well, I think last year or the year before. But there's everything in this category, from machine learning to Wi-Fi to anything, mesh boxes. So, new technology is one of those things that we're looking at, and if you're somebody like me who's being a judge, I'm thinking, how are we actually pushing the industry forwards, and how we've got access to APIs that we should be using. So we talked about weather, but that really gives you access to nearly everything in the world. It gives you transport, weather, shopping, TV, what's on. So how is technology integrated into it, and actually how does it push it forwards? How does out of home become a screen for the technology to shine through?
And when the judge is looking at your awards entry, they need to get it instantly. So simplicity is absolutely key. And this is a really good example, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, great work from WCRS for NHS Blood and Transplant for their Missing Type campaign, which is obviously a play on missing type, where letters disappeared from brand names and place names throughout the UK. It was so simple, and I think that's very much part of its beauty, because that also made it really easy for brands to get involved in it.
Yeah, just in case you didn't get it, it's O and A has all disappeared, so
yeah,
it's the two blood types, rather than just letters. Now, depending what you think about this one, and I know I went on stage last year and shared a little bit of Helen's concerns about this one, but it's a really good example, given the video of environment. So I think creative agencies don't really engage with this enough, is where is the site and how can we use it best? So if you're looking at an awards entry that uses standard media, you can only really judge it on the creative content itself. If, for instance, there is an outdoor panel underneath a tree and use the tree as the hair for the creative, really interesting. So I think the environment is one of the things I will always look at an awards entry, just see, well, have they really thought about it, or has it just been one of those things that's just gone out on a broad swathe? If it's a broad swathe, that's fine. I'll also judge it on that. But this really, really helps, and if done well, can really push it forwards.
Absolutely. So we also need to consider at the beginning what actually the objective is and what role out of home is actually playing within the wider media mix for that specific campaign. So is it all about reaching eyeballs on the streets and having coverage, or is it all actually about reaching those eyeballs online, in which case it's all about the video? I don't think either's wrong. I think they both have a part to play, and I think potentially for the latter, maybe there's an argument there for a completely different trading model for those kind of campaigns based on maybe a cost per impression or cost per view base, as an example. And I'm sure all of you are very familiar with this example, really cool example of Pepsi Max. using augmented reality. And this is a great example of how our platform can be used as a generator for content in other channels, where it achieved over 7 million views on YouTube to date.
I think interesting, if we did this today, then that would be a transparent TV screen as well, which would be really cool. By the way, I'm just saying you should really be using those because they're really cool. Results, I mentioned it before, we took a little bit of Mickey out of it, but did it actually achieve its KPIs? So this is one of my favourites, another one of the competition winners for Motion Outdoor that actually achieved, was it £100,000 in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's actually what it should have achieved. That's absolutely brilliant. So when I'm sitting there and I look at the category, and there are many categories, effectiveness categories, I'll have to actually stand up and put my hand on my heart and actually did it achieve its category heading. So for certain awards, you know, if it's pure creativity, you can maybe, you know, fluff over this one a little bit. But for everything else, that's the kind of the part of the three big ones for me, is did it actually achieve anything? Did anybody even notice it? And how I'll actually do this, I'll go onto Google as a judge, and I'll Google it. So did anybody actually mention it? Did it come up? There should be at least 3 pages of articles mentioning it. So I've been to awards where nothing has come up. So that's always a worry. And the second part of it is it photoshopped? Is the entry photoshopped? I mean, if it's before, fine. But there's no reason to have a Photoshop visual submitted as the It Ran category. But you know, beware the great media pack that you send out. Don't send that to me personally as a judge, because I'll go, oh, I'm not really sure whether it actually ran and it looked as beautiful as that. I want to see the real thing.
So we know through our neuroscience research that relevancy really helps drive memory encoding. So if you can base your campaign around a wider movement or a topical issue, that will really help add momentum to your activation. As I'm sure some of you remember the story from last year where one of the gorillas from London Zoo did a great escape and then proceeded to down 5 litres of blackcurrant cordial. This was jumped upon by Ribena, who created a King Kong-style tactical activation on the back of that. And I know this is something that I think Helen touched on earlier as well, but I think it's such a shame that our medium isn't seeing more of these tactical budgets. We're so perfectly placed to instantly respond to those kind of stories, and it's such a shame that so many of them are going to digital. And I think that's a big area of growth potential for us as a sector.
And was it real? I've touched on this already. Did it actually run? So yes, you can Google it. Yes, you can see whether it actually had visuals behind it. But you know, you get that sense, did people actually talk about it on Twitter? And there is a magazine, I think it's somewhere in Wales, it's called It Ran. And all you got to do is you submit your idea to It Ran, and they'll publish it. So just so you can say It Ran, and that's it. So you can put it in your awards entry. But you know, ideally not. And they stick out like a sore thumb when you know they weren't real. There's just a whiff about them, and you can't get past that.
So as we kind of said earlier, like when you're actually creating your award entry and writing that up, make sure you actually spare a moment and think about the judges who are going to be marking this. Realistically, they're probably going to be doing it at the weekend or evenings, late night. So they're probably faced with a stack of different entries, all different formats. So cut to the chase, don't waffle too much, like don't disguise and dress up your idea with like complicated language that's unnecessary. Just make it really simple and really clear. And I think it's also, it might be an obvious point, but also worth pointing out that if you've got a campaign you're entering into multiple categories, don't just take the generic entry and put that into the same category, different categories. Make sure you change your write-up to actually reflect the title of the award that you're actually entering in, because it needs to generally be a convincing winner of that category.
If you can generally get a world's first in there, it does actually help.
Yeah.
So let's talk about women's aid. So let's apply that and just give you a bit of an insider view on what we actually submitted and the thinking about it. So would you give you a quick example of that? So it should actually follow that same format. So for those of you who haven't seen it or want a refresher, this was the post-campaign video, not the award entry itself.
It's really easy for people to pretend that domestic violence doesn't happen or that it's not an issue in society, especially if you don't feel that you know anybody who's experienced it.
When people notice this advert, they notice this woman and look at her injuries start to disappear, and it's showing people in a really clear way that we can end domestic violence together.
Every time somebody looks up, it's projected on a strip at the bottom of the screen. It registers, and as more people stop and spend time absorbing that message, something magical happens. The women go through a dramatic transformation. The swelling goes down, their bruises fade, they begin to heal.
In a public campaign to battle domestic violence.
This billboard, you have to look at it in order for it to work.
Signs of domestic violence in the United Kingdom is not turning a blind eye.
We were out there, and once people saw themselves on part of that big screen, they stopped for a closer look. And guys, campaigners say that is half the battle.
That made me feel a little bit teary when I first saw that when they did the record and that came back. I said, thank you. So the opportunity, Kat has already mentioned, creating the awards is a great platform. Now the opportunity, the reason you're seeing this, you're thinking, well, hang on, that wasn't from it, but it looks similar. So we actually had Women's Aid as a client of ours previously to this, and there's a very little, well, relatively well known at the time. It's an awarded campaign, and we never thought we'd be able to top it. So this was using cinema 3D glasses. So it was an in-cinema campaign. And when you wear the 3D glasses, the technology of the 3D projects a different video into each eye. So a couple of our creatives, and again, this is a great collaboration between creative and media. So we explained how it worked, and they said, well, okay, so could you do 2 videos to 2 different eyes? Well, yes, but the sound might get a bit mixed up. Well, what if you had the same soundtrack? Yes, that's possible. So what we actually did is, in cinema, we had a special advert that ran before some films, obviously. And then what it said is, okay, watch this video. And it said, close one eye, and you saw an orange in a fruit bowl. And it said, close the other eye, and you saw an apple. And you realized that you could close different eyes to see different videos. So what we did is we played 2 videos at the same time, not side by side, but at the same time. So you could choose to close an eye to domestic violence. And if you want to close a blind eye to domestic violence, we're never going to change it. So we already had the DNA of this idea there. Put this out there, we thought, do you know what, that's such a brilliant use of technology. We're never, ever going to be able to do it. And then all of a sudden, the Creative Awards came along, which is, okay, I think we've got another idea for this, which forced us into out of home. So the opportunity presented itself and we took it. So that's kind of where that came from. It wasn't just us sitting there going, how can we solve this? We were desperately trying to make this better, and out of home gave us the opportunity.
So at the beginning of, well, before the creative competition is even opened, I went round to actually present to the senior team at WCRS and talk them through the technology we have embedded in our screens, basically their creative toolkit to use. And one of the technologies we spoke about there was our lookout facial detection technology. So that certainly wasn't the spur of the idea, but it was more of a facilitator for the idea that came about. But we use that technology, but in a completely different way. So we use the camera feed from the cameras that sit in the screens and do quite literally look out at the audience, and use those to create a mirror stream, which we streamed back onto the screen so people could see themselves. Then we use the gaze time, so how long individuals were looking at the screen to detect if they'd looked for a set amount of time. And then we use the coordinates of that face to then overlay the pink dots on someone to register them as a looker. And then we use the total number of people looking to actually trigger and heal bruises on the lady's face. There's quite a few different elements of how we actually use that technology.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there was a huge amount of background going on to this one. So it wasn't really that camera's not supposed to be used for that. That's really supposed to be used for the dynamic serving of ads. So more men than women, older versus younger, nobody, or tracking where people are walking. So that's what it's supposed to be used for. But it was only really us scratching the surface going, can we use it? And the guys at DMT 360 was like, well, yeah, we can sort of use it if we plug this into here and we break this and cut this. So there was a passion to make something happen there, but it wasn't really supposed to be used. It was only really, what's that dot do up there, was the question. Simplicity is on many levels on this one. So the simplicity of, you just get it. Just if you don't actually look at it, nothing's going to change is level number one. And secondly, you've just got that, if you'll see from the actual award entry, it wasn't as clean as this when we submitted it. We had a whole bunch of text on this side of it. I can remember the meeting where he said, why don't we just say, just look at me, just cut to the chase. It's not a time to be messing around with long calls to action. And then thirdly, I think you don't have to do anything to actually get engaged in it. A lot of the ideas that were submitted, we had probably 30 ideas that creative teams have submitted for that year's award. And we sat there in a room and put crosses through a lot of them because they were just, well, you had to sit here and you had to do that and you had to pick up a thing and you had to hold the thing and it was just too complicated. And this thing, you did not have to do a thing, which is, I think, the most perfect use of technology is when it seems seamless. So I think the simplicity is baked into this at every level.
So the environments, the screens that were selected for this campaign were in really busy pedestrian environments where people actually had the opportunity to stop, dwell, and actually choose to engage with the campaign as well.
And I don't know whether you saw from the video, it's worth watching again, there was no script to that video. It was all other people telling the story for us. We didn't have to hire a voiceover artist because it was all this lady saying, and we went down there and what you saw were people interactive. And so that was the great part about it, is people told our story for us. So we knew it had to play the part of the video. Maybe, I don't know, 1,000 people might have walked past it that morning because it was only on for a morning in one location, and then we actually had it in multiple locations later on. But maybe 1,000 people saw it, of which maybe, I don't know, 200 people actually had their faces recognised by it. But we knew this was part of it. So this was the part that we needed to get to International Women's Day on the Saturday. So we knew that we wanted this to be the video that went out past that point. So we worked quite hard before Women's Day, on Women's Day, and after Women's Day. We knew this was the bit that was going to go afterwards. So we knew very quickly that we needed to get the video out very quickly, and there were some ads that followed as well.
So as you saw from the video, there were some amazing results. And I know when we were working on it, we knew it'd be big, but we were blown away with how big it actually was. I think it reached over 326 million people. There were over 70 press and broadcast journalists who actually featured this. And also on Twitter, it had, I think, 87 million impressions, so it was absolutely amazing. And I think it's also worth noting that as part of the premise that Dino said about the campaign, it's all about not turning a blind eye to domestic violence. The whole premise is, the first step to stopping it is actually identifying in the first place. So all these people that are reached by that campaign were actually, genuinely could make a difference.
And it was also topical. I mentioned, it was International Women's Day, generally on a Saturday. So we'd put out a press release, I think, on the Tuesday to the local or the main press. And we also made sure that we launched it in Canary Wharf as well. That's where most of the press were. So we'd already sort of thought about it quite deeply. And then we invited them down, I think, on the Friday. Yeah. So that we had a sort of a press preview on the Friday so that they then had something for their publications on the Saturday. So it was topical. We knew that most editors would want a Women's Aid story, International Women's Day story. And Women's Aid themselves said, it's a really big day. If we can get a story in the press, that would just be great. And that was the idea. And as Kat said, we had no idea how big it was going to go. But, it wasn't an accident it was on that day. And it wasn't an accident we put it at Canary Wharf. And it wasn't an accident it was on the Friday. And it wasn't an accident they got a press release on the Tuesday or the Wednesday to tee them up to there's something happening. And if they haven't thought about it, here's their get-out card for their publication.
And it was, as we said, it was real. It did run on Canary Wharf, Eat Street in Westfield, London, and also New Street in Birmingham. So people did generally see the activation as well. But we also took it one step further, and we did a collaboration project with Channel 4, which some of you may have seen, where they actually created an ad of the campaign that featured First in Break in Indian Summers, which was their new kind of big drama series at the time. And we did, admittedly, have a voiceover artist for this. So it was voiced over by Julie Walters, who is actually the star of Indian Summers and is also a patron of Women's Aid.
And this was actually the award entry. We didn't animate it, so this was just a PowerPoint deck that we sent in. I think this was animated by you guys to make it seem a little bit more interesting. But as you can see, it's just a PowerPoint deck. It's our old deck, it's a horrible, creepy typography, but it was just this simple. It just told the story. There were no pages of text. Just really get into the story. I think there were about 15 slides or something like this, and no more than this on each slide. Just took you through. Here you can see the original mock-up that we had there. And as I said before, sometimes I get those as award entries going, here it is. You go, that's never an award. That's never real. But you can see how much messaging we had on there. And there were subtle things like, well, in the end, we had to blur out the faces a bit just for privacy reasons until the landlord was happy with it. But, there was not a huge amount to the awards entry. It was just simple. So that's pretty much, deconstructing what we actually sent through. I think the award entry, the actual document, is still online somewhere, which is where I got that from, so you can have a look at it. So I've already judged a couple of awards this year, and I've seen some trends starting to happen. So I've just put, I think, 5 of them in here just to say, this is where I'm looking, or this is where the interest is, over and above what we're already seeing. So attribution has been mentioned today, and it's really about effectiveness, but attribution, i.e. actually somebody went in and bought something and attributing that back to some sort of out of home. So the example I've got here is not out of home, it's Spotify, it's Snapchat. So Snapchat have teamed up with Oracle, and that's quite a punchy mix. Oracle are the people that power the loyalty schemes within stores, physical stores. So if they know you've bought something, they're giving the data straight back to Spotify. So Spotify can then go, oh, if you bought a Samsung TV, we did actually show you a Samsung TV ad 3 days ago. Probably us that did that. By the way, can we have more ad money? Because we actually drove a sale. So, this to Kat's kind of plea, which is the industry trend thing, we need to be part of the media mix more than we are at the moment. We can see we're going up. But it's only when we can actually show attribution, not just people who saw it and all those sorts of metrics, actually attribution to sales. I've seen a couple of those kind of just peppering the area at the moment. It's really powerful. AI, machine learning as well, but essentially services that will allow you to have computer interaction with ads. So this is not the same as personalization. This is just if you could walk up to a D6 and ask it a question without having to press buttons. Interestingly, Facebook are investing in brain reading at the moment. It's not out there yet, but they want to know the words in your head before you've actually said them. So they're going one step ahead of this. So they really want to know what's in your head as you walk up to an award. But we're interacting with computers the way that computers want to interact with each other. We're clicking things, we're filling in boxes, we're scrolling through alphabetical lists. Whereas artificially intelligent ads, we can actually interact with them in a more interesting way. So syncing, we've seen this example already, but it's not just syncing radio to out of home, but it's also maybe syncing your mobile to out of home. It could be syncing TV to out of home, Spotify to out of home. So I think it's when those platforms start to come together, far more powerful. And generally you can then say, well, what's somebody looking at their phone? They see an ad come up on here, and they look up and it's all around them as well, much more powerful. Now location, this is one of my bugbears. Media owners need to really do a better job at going into agencies and telling them what inventory they have and what the benefits of the inventory are. So, this is a really good example. It would be no surprise it's up here that, it's seeing both sides of the story. It's on a media panel that goes around the corner. There's 2 sides to it. Brilliant. But also, I think there's a disenfranchisation. Is that a word? So creators, I think, have been hit a little bit hard by programmatic. And I know there was a discussion before about dynamic versus programmatic. I think the enemy in the room for creative is programmatic, because we've been stung a little bit by online media. So what we'll see is we'll say, oh, don't worry, it's programmatic. It'll find its rightful place and the most effective use. And we don't see it past that point. We don't know where it went, who it went to, when it went. We don't know any of that. We just told it was programmatic. So re-engaging with the actual physical of a location, going down there and seeing it, knowing the benefits of it, I think is a really interesting thing I'm seeing, where we're seeing tactical ads that really work with their environment much better. And then personal, and I'm not talking the creepy personal, this is not we're tracking your phone and we can take all the data off it. This is personal to the situation. It's not just broadcast media. So yes, we can do the weather, but this is actually one of the winners from last year that we did down at Holland Park Roundabout with Ocean. It's looking at the number plates when the cars are stopped. We track the number plates, and therefore we do something that is on the right side of the creepy end of it. So very much so. We didn't want to say, hey, you in the 2016 blue thing with your tax and your whatever. We just said, look, Guten Tag Audi, here's a message just for you. Anybody looking at this will probably go, oh yeah, we've got super uber awesome insurance. They probably wouldn't realize it was targeted at that person. That person would have thought it was personal. So when I say personal, I mean targeting the ads correctly. And one last one, I think collaborations. We've seen this amazing, this was super awarded last year, and it was sort of fumbled into existence. It wasn't really supposed to exist, but it did, and they made the most out of it at an award, or several awards. And I think also what we're seeing with Piccadilly lights up the road, that used to be lots of little squares, and now it's turned into one big canvas, which is just crying out for lots of companies to get together and stop trying to leapfrog each other a little bit. And I think we as consumers, or me as a consumer, I expect a little bit more playfulness from my brands. And when they can get together, we do this a lot with Sky. So we'll work with Sky and Disney, and we'll do a broadband using Toy Story. And that works better than us just trying to tell a story as Sky. So collaborations always work.
And lastly, just a few kind of final thoughts. We've seen some really good examples of how when media agencies and media owners and creative agencies work together collaboratively, we can get some really good results. And I think those are the campaigns that generally get clients talking and asking for out of home on their campaigns and their media plans. So I think we do owe it to ourselves to ensure that we are really taking full advantage of the halo effect that innovation creates on our medium and using that to grow our collective share. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and final call out to me is I really want your first names on my mobile phone. If you've got a really interesting thing, you think, I just need somebody to talk to, just give me a ring. That's like, I'm not being guarded about it. Just if you've got really interesting ideas, this is an industry thing. We need to be better at our industry at sort of getting creative ideas off the ground. So if you've even just got a thought, can I run it by you? Then come and have a chat. Come and have a chat to either of us. I just really want to help and push it forwards. And I'll walk away if I need to, but I'll give you the advice that you want. So industry needs you.